What's going on, y'all? Another day, and we all got our Tennessee State gear on, man. You know what I'm saying? T got the dunks, but we are in a great space today because we have the president, El Presidente, president of the TSU National Alumni Association, man. We are so happy to have him. He has a great story, man. He's doing so much for the community, so much for HBCUs, but so much for Tennessee State in general. So without no further introduction, Mr. Charles Galbreath, introduce yourself, where you're from, how'd you become president?
First, thank you all for having me on here. This is my zone. So I appreciate you all bringing me into my zone. There's a lot that I have to do as the alumni president, and I want to do more stuff like this. So I appreciate you all, and just blessings to the podcast. This is great. I've watched the episodes you've done so far, and they've been awesome. So I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you.
Cool. So tell us about yourself, Charles. So where are you from? What made you go to the wonderful institution TSU? And what do you do now professionally?
Let's talk. So I am from you got to put, you didn't go to an HBCU if you didn't put the in front of something. So I am from the Fulton, Missouri. You're like, what? Where is Fulton? So Fulton is not St. Louis, is not Kansas City. Fulton is right in the middle of Missouri. And I am just so proud to be from Fulton. My goal when I went off to school was to put Fulton on the map. People tried to get me to be oh, you from St. Louis? No, I'm from Fulton. You from Kansas City? No, I'm from Fulton. So it was literally my goal that one day when we're at the pep rally, you know how they yell out, who's from Memphis? Everybody's from Memphis. Everyone's from Atlanta. Everyone's from Chicago. I had the goal. I had the goal that one day someone would yell out Fulton, Missouri on the mic, and they actually did. And I was the only one yelling, but I held it down for Fulton, Missouri. So I'm from Fulton, Missouri. My story is a little bit different. Fulton's a small town. I went to a predominantly white high school. Definitely loved my experience. I never saw myself at an HBCU. And so what's interesting, I was completely Carlton Banks, completely the preppy, wearing the Doc Martens, wearing the khakis and the polo. And I had no plan to go to an HBCU. And what's funny about it is, actually, I don't know if y'all remember the program Up with People. Up with People was a program that was for actors and musicians. And so I'm actually a musician. I'm a pianist. I play the saxophone. I sing. And so I had my heart set on joining Up with People and traveling the world. And so what they did is kind of an exchange program. You travel the world and you put on a show for whatever country you're in. You are there for several weeks to several months, and you learn their culture and you bring their culture back to the United States. And so it's like a culture exchange. So I had my heart set on, I'm going to be in this Up with People. Well, the year that I graduated, which was 2000, Up with People lost their funding. So that I couldn't do it. And so what's interesting is my sister is Miss Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And so my sister is 4 years older than me and had her heart set on, I will go to a Black school. I don't care where it is. I don't care which Black school. I'm going to an HBCU. And so the interesting thing, my mother had an intern. My mom's a guidance counselor, and she had an intern. And I really, really wish I knew this young lady's name, because she changed the course of life for my sister and myself. But her intern was actually from Tennessee State University. And so she came into work and was talking to my mom about, your daughter needs to go to Tennessee State University. And so my sister actually went to TSU. And me being the little brother who was going to travel the world, who had no other plan, I had no first, no second, no third choice for college. It was not in my plans. I just went where my sister went. So my story is grand about Up with People, but it's I just followed my sister to TSU. So that is my TSU story. That's how I decided to go to an HBCU.
So did you have the same major as your sister, or you guys had different majors?
No, my sister is a whole math major. My sister had a whole star with NASA, and like she is like very technical, and I'm like I got an A in speech. So that is completely. I had my business. I have a business administration degree, so my degree is in marketing. So what's interesting even about that is I've always been the type that I follow passion. I don't follow a plan because, as I learned early on in life, your plan can change. Something that you want to do cannot even be available to you. So I've learned to follow my passion. So my passion led me into juvenile justice. So 4 days after graduating from TSU in 2004, I actually went home back to Fulton, Missouri, and I saw an ad in the paper to work in a juvenile facility. The way that they spoke about it in the paper it was like a youth treatment center. So it sounded fun. It's like, oh, like I'm going to be working at a camp and I'm going to be just hanging out with kids. We're going to be painting and drawing, listening to music. So I'm like, bet I can do that. I can be cool. Now, granted, I was still kind of Carlton, like even past college. So we'll go back to that. So Carlton shows up after being Mr. TSU, not knowing how to do nothing but walk around in a suit. And I actually work in juvenile justice. So even though my degree is in business administration, my career is in juvenile justice. And I've been working in juvenile justice since 2004.
The juvenile justice, is that like Scared Straight? You ever saw the show?
Yeah, it is. And what's so cool about it? So I worked in a youth treatment facility. So that's so the first facility I worked in was actually a girls' facility. It was Rosa Parks Center. I was hired to work in the Rosa Parks Center for girls. And again, it's like where you have anywhere from 10 to 12 youth who have been arrested, and they're in the care of the state. And so those girls were a lot. And I was like, this is like the Bad Girls Club. Like, it was so, when I tell you, it was so much fun. And I have so many different things. I want to be on reality TV too. So we'll talk about that too. So I was like, this is like the real world. Like what happens when people stop being polite? They start cussing people out and they start fighting. And I'm like, yo, like, so people will call me and be like, what are you doing now? I'm like, I'm working in these youth facilities with the Bad Girls Club. And it's like the real world. So it's like I was on reality TV. So I really loved it. It was so engaging and interesting. It fit my personality. I love to talk to the kids. They were entertaining. I was entertaining to them. So it was just great. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And so I've stayed in it and I moved along within it. And so now I'm a consultant for New York City. So I'm consulting the New York City juvenile justice system. So I moved around. I was working frontline staff as a counselor. I was a statewide trainer for the state of Missouri with the Department of Social Services. And so actually the consulting company that I work with now is Missouri Youth Services Institute. So the Missouri approach is one of the leading approaches with how to handle youth in juvenile facilities and youth treatment facilities. And so New York wanted to try out that model. And so they actually closed down some of their correctional facilities for youth, and they opened up these treatment facilities. And so I've been consulting them for the past 10 years.
It's the juicy stuff I want to get to.
Yeah.
Like you are in a class that me and Mario can't speak on, and it is the upper echelon of Tennessee State University. Let's talk about this Mr. TSU experience, being royalty while on the yard. Like, let's talk about this experience. What led you to do this? I mean, you being the Carlton guy all your life. And so Mr. TSU is probably like a twinkle in your eye, but you like, I mean, how I'm going to get there? Like, what does that look like? So let's talk about that path to that, man.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I always shout out Cool Mill. Cool Mill is my guy. But however, I did not know Cool Mill until after school. So Cool Mill was one of the former Mr. Tennessee State University's Reginald Cool Mill Sharif. And truly is one of my mentors and friends to this day, but he was my mentor before I met him. And so even though I wasn't going to college was not on my path, I had never seen a cool guy like Cool Mill until I opened up this yearbook of my sister. So my sister used to bring home her pictures, back in the day when you had to go develop the pictures. So when she would develop her pictures from coming back from school, we would go through all her pictures. She'd tell me stories. And then she brought her yearbook home one year. And when she brought her yearbook home, I opened it up to this 2-page spread. And it was the coolest guy I'd ever seen in my life. I had never seen, we got Ebony, we got Essence, we got Jet, we got all of these magazines that portray Black excellence. I had never met someone that was young and seen someone who was young who looked like Black excellence, and they were an everyday person. They weren't a celebrity. They weren't a star. He was just Cool Mill. And so I was like, I want to be him. I didn't care where I went. I wasn't thinking about it being at a college. I was just like, I have never seen someone move a crowd like this. And again, let me tell you, this was in the late 90s. So there was no video. I didn't see the video of this. I'm seeing the action through photographs. And I'm like, he's so cool that his energy is coming through the page. So that is when I went to school. Again, Carlton worked at Fulton High School. I was the drum major in the band. I was the student body president. And so I had learned my space amongst my classmates. And so I was afraid that wouldn't translate when I came to TSU, because, again, I didn't think that Carlton would work. And I need to stop saying Carlton. It was Charlie. My name was Charlie my whole life. Like my parents, my family, my friends, they have no clue to this day. They're like, who is this Charles guy that just popped up out of nowhere? So Charlie came to TSU, and Charlie was scared, even though my sister was there. My sister already had her own life. She was a senior. She had a boyfriend. So she already was at TSU having the time of her life. And then here comes her younger brother, who is scared out of his mind. When I tell you, I was so afraid because I just didn't think that I would translate at a Black school. And what was interesting about that is that I am a fan of the culture. I am the culture. When I tell you, when I was younger, all I did was listen to rap and listen to, just like everybody else. But I did that at home. And then I went and portrayed something different at school to make it work. So when I got to TSU, the culture showed up. And after being afraid, after being nervous, I was like, I've got to show up differently. And so that's when Charles in Charge was birthed. Charles in Charge was birthed out of me having a conversation with me. And yes, I talk to myself. I'd be like, yo, self, you got to get it together. So that's why I have a lot of different names and a lot of different characters, because it's like a conference when I start talking to myself. I'm like, Charlie, yo, chill. Chaz, get it together. Charles in Charge, come forth. So, I got that whole Beyonce thing.
Here in the mirror.
Yeah, you know how it goes. So when Charles in Charge came forth, Charles in Charge was my ambition. It was my leadership. It was my fire. It was my drive. It was my creativity. And so Charles in Charge said, you can accomplish exactly what you want to accomplish. And so one of those goals was to be Mr. TSU. And so I aligned myself on SGA. I served on SGA. I did a lot of things to help out the position of Mr. TSU before I got the position of Mr. TSU. And I was in a meeting with with a former Mr. TSU, Rico Chappelle. Shout out to Rico Chappelle. He crowned me. And they were looking for people to help kind of move the position forward. And so they were kind of sitting there talking about, like, we need someone to run who kind of understands what the position can be. And we can kind of put that person forward, and they can speak and they can do all these things. I'm sitting there like, y'all know I want to run for Mr. TSU.
Like, I am the change.
I'm ready. Tag me in. So I did. And so I went in with that goal. My goal was not, it started out to be like Cool Mill, but then the goal became, we need Mr. TSU. We need this position and this role to show up and be a position that stands beside Miss TSU all year long. So the history of Mr. TSU, it was just a position for homecoming. So you had the pageant on Tuesday, you participated in coronation on Wednesday, participated in the game on Saturday, and then it's like, thank you very much for your service. We don't need you anymore. And so it was that cutthroat. It was that cutthroat. So to come along and present something that could last all year long, and that Dr. Hefner used, Dale Williams, who was our advisor, used, and they were like, no, you can do this all year long. We'll let you speak. We'll let you lead sessions and seminars. I was able to get a wardrobe. I got a 3-suit wardrobe, and I was able to get the position to be a voting member of Student Union Board of Governors. So all in that time was able to push things forward. So that's my Mr. TSU.